Hello everybody, it's Wyron here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time we're on character drone playing as the forces of the Lizardmen against the forces of the Dark Elves. And for this match, we're doing something a little cruel and malicious, and that is running the Slann mob. So, in this video, one of the things I wanted to highlight was some of the abuse you can really pull off with Croak. And this isn't even the most extreme build. I've seen some much more extreme variations of this idea. But I wanted to highlight it, and so I brought a kind of limited build or variant of this abuse build into Quick Match. So going over the build. For my lord, the core of this composition really is this resistance stacked blob in the middle. The main sort of cornerstones of it, Mazda Mundi, Lord Croak, and the Star Chamber Guardians are all here. Now, if you want even to stack even more resistances, you can bring the Regiment of Spears to get the missile resist ability. You can bring an Engine of the Gods to get 5% passive ward save. There's other options, definitely. But this is just the basic. So for my Lord, I'm running Lord Mazda Mundi. Now, Lord Mazda Mundi on the toilet seat obviously has 40% base missile resist, which bumps up to 52%, a monstrous number with the Sunburst standard of Hexoatl. Surrounded here by the Star Chamber Guardians, he does gain an additional 15% physical resistance. So essentially against missile resist, or against normal physical missiles, he does have a 67% resistance. Alongside him, Lord Croak is basically gaining the same benefits. He's also got that crazy missile resist of 52%, stacked on top of physical resist, so basically 67% resist. And then against magic, because he's got further resistances, he's up to 77% resist, which is pretty insane. So against ranged missile damage, this build is already ridiculous, unless you manage to snipe out the Star Chamber Guardians. Even then, it's pretty nuts. To exacerbate these problems, we have a lot of trash cleared. So we've got Deliverance of Itza 1 through 3, of course, which deletes mobs very effectively. Lord Mazda Mundi also does have his Bound Banishment as well as Ruination of Cities, and Apotheosis to heal whatever little damage my opponent does. On top of that, the item that Lord Croak brings does have a -9 melee attack AoE, and of course the Sunburst Standard has a +9 melee defense. So effectively your opponent is losing out on 18 melee attack whenever they're trying to get in on you in close quarters. And finally, as if all of this resistance stacking was not enough, we do have the Shield of the Old Ones, which grants 22% resistances, and then on Croak we've got the Supreme Shield of the Old Ones, which is 44% damages, and these stack. So we've got this Doom Blob, and this is really the anchor of it. It denies my opponent most of his usage of elite infantry, of heavy cav, and it really just creates this focal point that my opponent's going to have a really tough time breaching. Sniping these lords on top of the Star Chamber Guardians is going to be very tough, and if he tries it, we've got a lot of support. On the flanks, there are 2 skin cords on either end, simply to give us some more width. Skin cords with javelins in the back. I'm not really concerned about elite infantry at all stopping these guys, because I do have both Croak as well as Mazda Mundi to just delete them from the game. In the second line, to deal with large, which is really the main bunker buster here, we do have 3 units of Salamander hunting packs, 2 normal ones, as well as the Regiment of Renown Umbral Tide. These guys not the best in melee, certainly a bit threatened if they get caught, but in close quarters, but from range they will decimate large targets. They'll annihilate Dark Riders with repeated crossbows, which is one of the units I was a little concerned about, and they can definitely pressure dragons and that sort of stuff. On the flanks of that, we do have 2 units of Cold War Spear Riders, simply to provide some anti-large support, and a single unit of Feral Cold Ones to disrupt backlines, as well as just to soak up charges and be a nuisance. They're a decent throwaway unit, in my opinion. For my opponent, he's kind of predicted this sort of composition. If we look at his build, he has brought 5 Dark Riders with repeated crossbows. These guys, that's the max you can bring. They're already going to start chipping away. Now look at how much little this volley does, though. He fires into Mazda Mundi there, and does almost nothing. Mazda Mundi took an entire volley of bolt thrower fire, or of repeater crossbow fire there, and lost about 300 HP. Which is crazy. He basically shrugs it off without a care in the world, and in return my opponent is going to start losing some models here to the Umbral Tide, so that is definitely not what he wants to be doing in life. Now besides that, my opponent has gone very wide. He's got 2 Reaper bolt throwers spread out very far so that I can't focus one or the other, which is a very good play. He's got Cold One Knights, one of which is hidden in the woods back there, to provide some anti-large support and be very mobile. And then his infantry corps is very cheap. He's got a single unit of spears out over here, and the rest of it is 3 units of bleak swords as well as Hellebronai. He knows very well that he cannot go toe-to-toe in an infantry fight, because he's wary most likely of Croak as well as Mazda Mundi and that sort of stuff. Lizardmen always had decent counters to mobs with their magic play, but it was always risky, and Croak essentially lets you pull it off with very low risk, because well, quite frankly, Croak has, well, he can nuke stuff without taking any friendly fire. As you can see, Mazdamundi, they're getting shipped down by both Reaper Bolt Throwers and taking very little damage for it. My opponent does also have Malekith, who I forgot to mention. Definitely not a bad choice. Malekith's pretty potent. He's a decent combat lord in close quarters. He's on a dragon. He's got very high resistances, 20% physical, 25% missile. Here he's got Soul Stealer for the heals, Word of Pain for the debuff, Breath Attack, Gaze of Malice, Stand Your Ground, and all that good stuff. So definitely very well kitted out here. Malekith's definitely a bit of a threat, but against the Starshaper Guardians, he's going to struggle. Then, in the meantime, on the periphery, the fight is going down. Over here, with the Umbral Tide as well as the Salamander Hunting Pack, managed to force off these Dark Riders with their repeater crossbows, chasing them from the field, making them a rout. Over on this flank, my opponent is trying to get in with these Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, and the Feral Cold Ones here got caught out. I sort of sent them in on a kamikaze run just to tie down these Cold One Knights, buy me a little bit of time, and, you know, they succeeded. They got basically nothing done, but who really cares? And in the meantime, the Salamanders, with their 100 plus damage per shot, are deleting these poor, lightly armored Dark Elf cavalry units. In the meantime, we're going to be going for an engagement. You know, Malekith does dive down to disrupt these poor little skinks a little bit. Certainly that Bolt Thrower is still trying to fire on Mazdamundi, who's a large target, so it does get that bonus damage, but the simple fact is he's just so tanky, he really doesn't give a rat's ass, and he's able to push in here and start beating up on these bad boys. And you can see a Ruination of Cities does go down. Now, certainly hurts my poor little skinks over there, but I don't really care too much. They're just skinks. We're going to cast a Banishment over here. You can see Croak rising from the depths there to cast his melee spells, I guess. And these Bleak Swords are getting completely deleted from the game. It's an absolutely brutal slog here. We palpable our shields. My opponent basically can't do damage. He dropped Soul Stealer just now. And that Soul Stealer is going to do almost nothing because we've got those double shields popped. Elsewhere, in the meantime, now sure, these poor Skinkors get caught by 2 Dark Riders, so that's going to be a horrible day for them. But in the meantime, our Salamanders are firing on Malekith. And you can see, despite those high resistances, he's got 45% resistance to missiles, or physical missiles. Malekith is going to get chunked pretty quickly by that monstrous damage output from the Salamander Hunting Packs. Unfortunately for me, though, my opponent is starting to sort of pick up the reality that his Reaper Bolt Throwers need to focus on the Salamander Hunting Pack, so he's popping some shots their way. But in the meantime, this pocket is buckled. It's basically gone. I certainly don't have great targets for Croak, besides like this pocket of infantry. But, you know, it's a good threat. It was enough to prevent my opponent from bringing elite infantry, which used to be a great anchor tool against Lizardmen. Over here, in the meantime, the Salamander Hunting Pack definitely struggling a little bit against the Bolt Thrower. It's definitely whittling them down, but they are able to apply some pressure to these Dark Riders with 3 crossbows. Basically, every hit is a kill against these lightly armored cavalry. And over here, we are going to cast a Deliverance of Itza on the blob of Bleak Swords, as well as the Hellbroni, and they practically get deleted, taking 2,000 plus damage each and getting destroyed. Over here in the meantime, Malekith does dive down to try to save these Cold One Knights who got isolated, and immediately started taking a pounding from the Cold One Spear Riders, who are having absolutely none of this nonsense. They're really, really potent, able to absolutely shred him, and his relatively low. When you get surrounded like this, he doesn't have the best melee defense. 52, definitely solid, but not that good. Unfortunately, I did have these boys set to melee stance because I was trying to get in on the infantry earlier to just chase them. So they are going to run into melee here against Malekith, so definitely a little bit of a mistake. In the meantime, the Salamanders over there firing into the flanks of these Dark Riders with repeater crossbows. Now, granted, the Salamanders are not the most accurate unit for sure, but they're doing a lot of damage. These are up to 88 kills. Keep in mind, that is against elite units like Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, or relatively, I guess not elite, but fairly expensive units. For 650, these guys have already paid for themselves and they're doing even more now. You can see the rain of fires flying in. You're certainly doing some friendly fire to the Cold Spear Riders, but we do have our shield to protect us, and these guys are having a bad day. Now, unfortunately, the Golden Knights here are getting into the cookie jar, and because the Golden Spear Riders are zoned out by the Dark Riders, who were forced to throw themselves into the fray there to save Malekith, because of that, my opponent is in a slightly better spot. These Cold One Knights didn't get completely deleted. That said, at this point of the game, it is basically clean up in Isle 9. You can see over this Umbral Tide as well as the Salamanders are going to start unloading on these clumped up Dark Riders and just delete them from the game. Unit has an absolutely terrible time of it. Down to 7 models, you can see the pocket of dead cav there, and they completely shatter before making it to melee. Unfortunately, Malekith as well as the Cold One Riders are chasing, and you can see Gaze Malice does go down here looking to disrupt the cav, but does basically nothing. On the periphery, the Salamanders are doing some cleanup. Certainly, my opponent still has some troops. He's got all these Bleak Swords on the field. He still does have a unit of Bolt Throwers, and he forgot his Red Spears, but at this stage, it's basically just game over. The Cold One Knights actually do hit the charge here because I got stuck on trying to climb the hill. These guys are also very tired, as opposed to these Knights who are still just winded. So they're going to get in on these poor Salamander Hunting Packs. Fortunately, though, the Skink Brigade is still intact, and they managed to hit a few Poison Spears, slow them down. That's going to allow most of these poor little Salamanders to escape. Certainly, some of them do get speared down. This last boy over here gets stabbed in the back and topples to the ground dead, but not before having done immense amounts of damage. He gets up to 112 kills. The Cold One Spear Riders dive in here, decimating the Colon Riders. Now, in turn, we do get the Supreme Shield of the old ones, deflecting 44% damage. The Salamander Huntingbacks turns around and starts spewing flames into the pocket here, just destroying those Cold One Knights as well as Malekith. Stand Your Ground is not going to deny Salamander fire, and it's basically game over at this point. So my opponent's army is going to shatter to army losses, and that is that. Pretty brutal, ruthless sort of decimation of a build that was kind of optimized to deal with this box play. And yeah, so that was it. I kind of just wanted to highlight how ridiculous this resistance stacking can be. This build, obviously my opponent's build here was not like an optimally weak build for me to abuse, like a bunch of heavy infantry or something, which used to be a kind of an anchor tool. You'd bring some Blackguard or something, and certainly you wouldn't rely on them to win you the game, but they'd be a great sort of core of your army, because you could reliably hold forever against units like Temple Guard, against units like Source Warriors, because they weren't the best at killing. They were also much more holding oriented, but you could sort of reliably beat them in the infantry fight, and then you just bring a bunch of tools to crack the dinos. So that's tough now. The Lord Mazdamundi and Crow completely deny that sort of play. As you can see here, the Salamander Huntingback raking in insane amounts of kills against the Dark Riders, who really just can't go toe-to-toe. Granted, the normal, the Umbral Tide, as well as the normal Salamander, or this unit of Salamanders, didn't do that well. They were simply targeting other stuff. I'm pretty sure they focused Malekith a lot of the time. So they simply didn't get the opportunities. But nonetheless, it does show the Salamander Huntingbacks could be absolutely ridiculous. Skinks, of course, great for cleanup work. The Cold One Spear Riders also doing amazingly well. One gained 2 chevrons, one gained a single chevron, so pretty crazy stuff. Just deleted those Cold One Knights with a little bit of support, and were able to destroy Malekith pretty badly. And I really just wanted to show this how ridiculous this can get. Mazdamundi, of course, with 82 kills, Croak with 78, basically completely buckled that infantry formation in a matter of seconds. Had I been a little more astute, I had more than enough Winds of Magic. I could have deleted that blob of Herald Brona and Bleak Sword much sooner with that Deliverance of Itza. I had way more Winds of Magic than I needed at the end of the game, so just something to keep in mind. As for my opponent's build, I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's definitely not a bad idea. I do think his focus was a little off. I think ideally you want to pick off the Salamander Huntingbacks first, or the Cold and Spear Riders, then pick away the Star Chamber Guardians, and once, sort of, if you delete these sorts of units, these supporting tools, then you can later deal with Croak and Mazdamundi in full. So I think the Bolt Throwers should just focus the Salamanders very early on. To get rid of the Salamanders, that opens up your Dark Riders with your crossbows to focus out the Cold and Spear Riders, which in turn then opens, once you've got the Spear Riders gone, you can then just kind of cycle charge with your own Cold One Knights. You can pop your enemies' Star Chamber Guardians with crossbow bolts. And once all this is said and done, once the formation is basically reduced to the skin cohorts, the Feral Cold Ones, Croak and Mazdamundi, at that point Malekith can basically solo the entire situation by himself. So I think there was a little bit of bad prioritization for my opponent. Certainly it's not an unbeatable build, especially because this isn't like max abused here. This is still a relatively balanced composition, I would say. But I definitely do think that you have to focus a little better. You have to have your Bolt Throwers work down the Salamanders, get the danger away from your Dark Riders, then free up your Dark Riders to start shooting down the elites your opponent has to support their Mage Corps. Regardless, well played to my opponent Ralamo here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it entertaining and fun, and hopefully gives you both some warning of what is possible from the Lizardmen, as well as some ideas, potentially. Well, hopefully not too many ideas. But I'm personally hoping that Croak does get nerfed in an upcoming patch, but until then, well, this is possible, so keep it in mind. If you guys have any comments, any criticism, any questions, as usual, don't hesitate to post them. I'll do my very best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.